Good evening. Hope all of you are doing well. We're learning Maseches Chagigah Daf Yomi, a continuation of Torah that is above our pay grade, as is most Torah. But here says the Gemara, first a little bit of a side story about Malachim, and then we'll get back into Inyane Ma'aseh Merkava. We're on Daf Yomi about 7 or 8 lines down. The Gemara says, Amar le Shmuel l'Chia bar Rav. Shmuel says to Chia bar Rav, Bar Aryeh, you're the son of a lion. He was the son of Bar Chia. Chia was the son of Rav. So you're the son of a lion. Ta'emalach milsa. I'm going to tell you something. Mehani mili ma'al yusa. From these beautiful words, Zahava Amar Avuch, that your father said, namely something that Rav said, a beautiful piece of Torah. Kol yoma v'yoma. Every day, Nivran Malachi Asher Shmi Nahar Dinor. There are new angels that are created from Nahar Dinor, which is a place up in heaven. I don't know, again, place is a strong word, but it is a source from where angels come. The Amrei Shira, these angels are created, they say Shira and Ubatle, and then they're done. They dissolve, again, on whatever, they're nullified. In fact, the Mefarshim quote this pasuk in Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Brura about our custom to say Modeh ani lefanecha melachai v'kayam shechzarti b'nishmas v'lechem rabba emunasecha is based on this pasuk. However, while it's true that Rav was of the opinion that angels came from Nahar Dinor up in Shamayim, not everyone agreed. Angels are not created by Nahar Dinor; they were created by Hakadosh Baruch Hu speaking. That all of the celestial beings were created by Hakadosh Baruch Hu's Dibor and not from Nahar Dinor. Next, quarter of the way down. What is it? Nake or Nika? I thought it was Nika. Just make it Nike. So it says the Gemara that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, his garments are kislag, which is like shelag chivar, like white. The seyar reshek imar Nike, and his hair is like the color of cleaned wool, which is white. So Hashem's hair is white. And then uchsiv kivutzosav tal talim shecharotz keorev, that really the curls of Hashem's hair are black like a raven. So which one is it? Is Hashem's hair black or is Hashem's hair white? Lo kasha kan b'yeshiva kan b'milchama. It depends. The Kadosh Baruch Hu has hair that is appropriate to match the scenario. What does that mean? The Amar Mar, last of the short lines. Ein lecha no b'yeshiva lezakim. You don't want your Rosh Yeshiva to be a 25-year-old guy. You want a little gray hair or a lot of gray hair. You want them to have white hair even. But when it comes to war, you want that strapping young lad who just looks like he's got a lot of black hair. That's what you want. You want to see that vigor. So that's how the Gemara responds to this discussion about HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hair color. Again, all of this is kaviyachol. None of this is anything more than anthropomorphism at its most, and probably really the truth is that we don't even understand even the comparative aspects of it. So let's move on to the next section of Gemara. How many thrones are up in Shamayim? Kasevechad Omer Karse Shivivim Dinor, that the throne is like a ball of fire, and Kasevechad Omer Adi Karsun Rama V'Asik Yomin Yosif, that there are many thrones, and the Asik Yomin in capitals, that the ancient one sits in them, namely that Hashem sits in the throne. So how does that work? One throne or two? Lokasha Echad Lo Ve'echad LeDavid. Wow, that is some serious company that David has. That's a pretty remarkable thing to even hear, and the Gemara doesn't even like it. The Gemara says back to this shita, which is really Rabbi Akiva. What does Rabbi Akiva say? Echad lo, ve'echad leDavid, divrei Rabbi Akiva. He was of the opinion that one throne belonged to each, one to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and one to David. Amar Rabbi Yossi Aglili, Akiva, ad mosai ata oseh shchina chol. You're going to say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sitting next to a human being. That as great as David was, and mamish kvoda b'makom hamunach, how can you be mashve bein zeh lezeh? There's no comparison at all. Ella really says Rabbi Yossi Aglili, this is answer number 2 about how to understand this. Really, it's echad l'din ve'echad l'tzedakah. It's not about thrones as it relates to Hashem and somebody else. It's one about din and one about tzedakah. Now, the Gemara wants to know, interrupting the Brisa, kibla minei or lo kibla minei? Did Rabbi Akiva accept the Musar or not? Did he say, really, the throne belongs to David, or did he not? Let's see. Says the Gemara, 5 lines into the middle with lines, Toshma echad l'din ve'echad l'tzedakah, divrei Rabbi Akiva. Oh, he changed his opinion. Now he says that one chair is for din and one chair is for tzedakah, so he accepted the Musar. Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, when he saw the initial sheet of Rabbi Akiva, that Echad LeDavid ve'Echad LeKadosh Baruch Hu, he said to him, Malach etzel Haggadah. Why are you talking in Agadatas? Kalach midibrosecha. Stop all the talking that you're doing, and Lech etzel negoim ve'alos. Go learn the things that you're good at. It's a really interesting thing, because we're going to see today is the Gemara of Arba Nichnasu the Pardes, and Rabbi Akiva did just fine. He was the only one who did just fine. So then if that's true, then really how does this match up? But that's what the Gemara says. Go to the place where you're good. You're excellent in very complicated halachic areas, lofty, high-level academic thinking. Go over there, leave this alone. And therefore, Belazar ben Azariah has a different approach as to what we do with the one throne versus two thrones. Really, one was the throne, and the other was the footrest that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put his feet on. And Shrafraf lahadom raglav shenamar shamayim kisi ve'aretz hadom ragli, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, his throne is up in Shamayim, and that's where HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyachol sits, and his feet belong down on the ground where there is a stool of sorts. Shifting gears, although we will come back to this. Ki asa Rav Dimi Amar Shmona Asrei Kalalos Kilel Yeshaya Es Yisrael. Yeshaya, in his effort to get the Jews to follow Torah properly, he laid out some 18 curses that were going to take place. 18 things, curses is a bit of a strong word, 18 changes that were going to take place within Klal Yisrael. But Loniskara Rodaito, he couldn't even calm down from talking about these 18, Amar Lahem, until he read the following pasuk, HaMikra Zeh, Yiravu Anar Bezakin V'Nikla B'Nechbad. We'll learn about what this pasuk means later, but Yiravu Anar Bezakin means that there will be a dominating child who will rule over the elders. What were the 18 klalos? So we're out now at the first of the very long lines in Yudal, halfway down. Says the Gemara, Shmona Esrei klalos ma'ninhu. They're all quoted in the pasuk. D'chsiv, Kinei Hadon Hashem Tzavakos Meisim Yerushalayim and Yehuda. Hashem is going to remove from Yerushalayim and from Yehuda. What is he going to remove? Mash'enu Mash'ena, two different types of support. We'll see what they are. Kol mashein lechem, any support from bread, v'chol mashein mayim, and any support from water. We're going to go through all of these as we navigate the page, because right now they just seem kind of vague. Gibor, a strong person, V'ish Milchama, a person of war, Shofet, a judge, V'navi, a prophet, V'koseim, a person, this is a pasuk in Sefer Devarim and Parsha Shoftim, Bar Mitzvah, Parsha Koseim Ksamim. This is a person who engages the divine in a non-mutter way. It's not allowed typically, but we'll see that this is actually talking about a person who's not really a diviner. V'zakein, an older person, Sar Chamishim, a person who's 50 years old, that we'll see that this will change. Nesopanim, someone who people like. V'yoet, someone who gives advice. V'chacham, someone who's wise about the secrets of the Torah. V'navon lachash, and he understands the whispers of the Torah, again referring to Torah Sasod. And the psukim continue 3 lines into the wide lines. V'nasatin arim sareim v'ta'alulim yimshelubam, and we will put children as masters, and v'ta'alulim, the people who are those who mock, yimshelubam, they will be the ones who rule over. So that's what the pasuk says. And if you count, there are 18 things that are going to be removed from Yehuda and from Yerushalayim. So let's dig in. 2/3 of the way down, the Gemara says 3 lines into the wide lines. What are all of these 18 things? A mash'ain, that first reference in the pasuk is Elu Bali Mikra. There won't be any people who really know Tanakh anymore. Mash'ena, this is Elu Bali Mishnah, the people who know Mishnah is called. Like who? Kigon, Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema v'Chavera. These people were experts in Mishnayos. What does it mean to be an expert in Mishnayos? We've got it easy. We only have 6 Siddharim of Mishnayos. But the Gemara says that Pligu bar Papa v'Rabbanan, what's considered a great in Mishnayos? Chad Amar Sheish Me'os Sidrei Mishnah. That there are 600 Siddharim of Mishnah, not 6. We literally have 1% of what they were masters in.
Ravina has 400 chapters of what is there. We only have.
So the Mefarshim actually discuss here, what does it mean that there's 600 Siddharim? We already know the Ikra and Shal Halacha, that hasn't been lost. Yes, there are machlokos, that's due to a lack of information. So
machlokos originally.
What?
Machlokos only began after the Korban.
Oh, correct. So in fact, the art scroll here has a lengthy piece here that what we're talking about here is a devolving of our halachic structure from these 600 down to 6. The 600 wasn't more halachic sugyas, but it was more fleshed out, and therefore there were fewer machlokos. And when we whittled it down to 6, 2 things happened. Number 1, there was more machlokos because we understood less, and number 2, and this really is good, but it's very hard to learn, is that Mishnayos are imbued with ramazim ketanim that we need to pick up on. Sometimes the Gemara draws them out, and we're like far-fetched. No, that was what the original Mishnah was like. The original Mishnah was much, much longer. So that's what the art scroll here is a whole arichus, that machlokes. We know the famous first machlokes is Hillel and Shammai about smicha. We've learned about it. Yeah, I didn't even know we were going to see it. We learned it we learned it earlier in this Masechah. I remember we learned smicha a couple of times. I remember. Don't know. Anyways, one person says that mastery in Mishnayos is 600 Siddharim. V'chad Amar Shva Me'os Sidrei Mishnah, 700. No, the difference between the two for us is unfortunately not meaningful, because we're not masters of any of the Siddharim. What's kol mashen lechem? What's that referring to? That's elu baalei Talmud. These are people who really understand Talmud. And in this reference, it means people who are poskim. Shneimar lechu lachmo belachme. You can come join me in eating bread. Ushasu b'yayin masechasi. You can come join me in the mixtures of wine that I make. What's v'chol mashen mayim? Elu baalei agada shemoshchen libo shel adam kimayim be'agada. These are people who are good orators. They're able to capture a room with their words. Very powerful. What's a gibor? Ze bal shmuos. What does it mean, bal shmuos? A person who knows how to draw from the information of the previous generations. I heard a shmua from my Rebbe. I heard a shmua from my Rebbe. Always pulling back. What's v'ish milchama? Ze sheyodei lisa v'litin b'milchamta shel Torah. It's a person who knows how to navigate the complex battles that people have to have over Torah. What's a shofet? This is a person who is zed dayan shadan din on emes la'amita, a person who really knows how to paskin a din, even in the face of all of the challenges. You got to give the psak that's emes. Navi kimashmo, and Navi is a prophet. What's a kosem? In this case, a kosem, which normally is about the divine, zem melech, shenemar kosem al sif sem melech, that there are divine words on the lips of a king, not here referencing one who's inappropriately trying to tap into the divine. What's a zaken? Sharoi liyeshiva, someone who's really fitting to be a Rosh Yeshiva. What's Sar Chamishim, which we learned previously was the minimum age to learn Ma'aseh Merkava, that a person should be at least 50 years old. Says the Gemara, here we're going to learn that differently. Al Tikri Sar Chamishim, Ela Sar Chumashim, the master of the Chumash. Someone who's a baki in the 5 books of Breshis, Shmos, Vayikra, Bamidbar, and Devarim. They're really just holding. They understand it all. Davar acher, another pshat in Sar Chamishim is Sar Chamishim kid Rabbi Abo. What does Rabbi Abo say Sar Chamishim is? Tamar Rabbi Abo, Mikan ein ma'amidim metorgaman ala tzibur pachos mechamishim shana. We cannot have a metorgaman on the tzibur unless the Rebbe who's speaking is at least 50 years old. It's not chashuv to have a Rebbe who's 40 years old or 35 years old. He might be a big Talmud Chacham. Some of the Meforshim that I saw when just reading through this Ma'aseh Merkava stuff said that there were people who were already learning Torah Sasod by the age of 13. I mean, wild Iluya people. It's not normal. Like your maturity, you just have to be steeped in Torah. It's not that what
they can be very intelligent. The maturity.
Yeah, the Gemara later today, when we get back to Ma'aseh Merkava, is going to make a comment about the need for your intellect to match your maturity. I mean, it doesn't say it in those words, obviously, but that idea that you have to.
Weinberg's parents got married. The father was 13, the mother was 12.
And I'm sure their marriage was wonderful. They raised some amazing children. You know?
Doesn't mean that's an understatement.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean he was learning at all.
No. I mean, Bichlal, the Yerida Sadoris is sharp in every area.
I mean, there could be emotional maturity at that age.
Yeah, I hear you. Good point.
Taka, but it was 100 years ago. Whatever, it's a long time ago.
Right, my grandmother was 19. My grandfather was 18.
Right.
Yeah, that's not.
They're not even in 8th grade yet. All right, let's continue. That's what the Gemara says, is that the person has to be at least 50 to have a Meturgaman. When the Sopanim, what does that mean? Zeshinosim panim ladoro ba'avuro. It's a person who is of such stature in the community that the whole generation benefits from it. Lamala, up in heaven, that happened with Kigon Reb Chanina ben Dosa. We know many miracles that happened with Reb Chanina ben Dosa. And Lamata, down on earth, Kigon Rabbi Abahu, Bey Kesar. When Rabbi Abahu was around, so the Bey Kesar, everyone by the Bey Kesar loved him. They used to sing a song when he would walk up to the gates. They loved him. It was an amazing. He really knew how to be with the people. Yoetz, well, it's this person who's giving Eitzah, says the Gemara, this isn't Eitzah that you go sit across from the shul rabbi's desk and spill your guts, but this is Sheyodela Aver Shanim V'Likvuah Chadashim. This Yoetz is a person who knows how to set the Jewish calendar, which, as we've learned in the past, is quite complicated. The Chacham, what is a Chacham in this case? Zeh Talmid Hamachkim Es Rabosav. It's a person who is so bright and at the same time humble enough that in his questions he's able to shter his Rabbeim to make sure that they too are gaining in their knowledge. What's a Charashim? We said that a person is going to have Bichacham Charashim. He's going to know about that which is secretive. Says the Gemara, B'shasha Posech Divrei Torah. When this person opens his mouth, Hakol Nasim Kecharashim. It's that person, they're very rare. When they open their mouth to talk, the room is pin silent. I mean, pin drop, dead silent. No one, you can't hear anything. It's amazing. And there are people like that who can just, the second they start talking, they hold a room. It's an unbelievable thing. Unbelievable. The Navon, what's a Navon? Zehamevin davar mitoch davar. Of course, this is one of the 6 questions that the Gemara Maseches Shabbos highlights. It's one of the questions Hashem will ask with Shasha Nichnas Adam Ladin. One of the questions is Havanta davar mitoch davar. Are we able to apply things from one scenario and bring them into a new one? What about Navon Lachash? The Gemara says 15 lines from the bottom. This is a person who's on such a high level that he has the right to give over Divrei Torah Shinit Balachash. This is a Rebbe of Torah Sasod. And all of these people are missing from Yehuda and from Yerushalayim. This is one of the things that happened pre-Churban. What is Vinasati Ne'arim Sareim? That we're going to have children who are going to be the leaders. They're going to be the officers. Says the Gemara, My Vinasati Ne'arim Sareim. What's with the word Ne'arim? So Ne'arim here is actually not about age. Ella, sorry, that's not correct. Amar Rebbe Lazar, what does it mean that they're Tali b'nei Tali. They're foxes, the sons of foxes. This is meant to be a certain slyness that exists. That they're just so sly, and therefore they're not good people to be in charge. And all of these 18 things that he said still were really insufficient. How so? Because lo niskara radaito, he was lo niskara radaito until ad she'amar lehem yirahavu anar bezaken. He didn't even feel calm until he said that there will be a child dominating the elders. What does this mean? Says the Gemara, Elu b'nei adam sheminu armina mitzvos. These people who really have no mitzvos to them, yirahavu b'mishem emula b'mitzvos kirimo. You guys are keeping a lot of halacha, but there's a lot of problems as well. And that it doesn't exempt you from being a proper yid, and therefore you're going to have people who are in charge of you who are not so from. What's v'hanikla b'nichbad? What does that mean? Yavo mishechamuros domos alav kekalos. You're going to see that there's someone who views chamuras as kalos. The strict things are it's really not so bad. You play it down, I don't have to cover this. I don't have to wear that. I don't have to daven in a minyan. All the things that we all rationalize certain areas of our lives. It's not a judgment on any one of them. We all have them. That's without a question. But when we make the chamuras into kalos, we make them into things that are really not such a big deal. Then then you're going to be taken over by b'mishakalos domos alav kechamura, someone who's very strict. Because that's the midah keneged midah, is that if we don't take seriously that which halacha puts forth, and we make the big things into things that are small, so then seemingly the midah keneged midah that played out by the times of the Churban with Yeshaya, that was therefore that you're going to have someone who's so strict even about the small things. Amar Rav Katina. Rav Katina says 9 lines from the bottom, middle width of the page. Amar Rav Katina, afilu, middle of the line. It's too confusing. Too many things coming out of my mouth at the same time. Amar Rav Katina, even at the time that Yerushalayim was doing quite terrible, at its downfall, there were still people who were very trustworthy people. Shene'emar, as the pasuk says, ki yispos ish be'achiv be'saviv, simla lecha katzin tihyalanu. It says you have a coat, you have a covering, and therefore katzin tihyalanu, you are going to be our leader. Dvarim shebnei adam miskasin kisimla yeshnon tachas yadecha. That which people normally cover, you have under your hand. This is a difficult reference, but it basically means that you're a Talmud Chacham and you have knowledge that other people don't have, and therefore you should be our leader. And as well, b'hameshake lo hazos. And what does it mean b'hameshake lo hazos? My b'hameshake lo hazos. Dvarim she'ein b'nei adam omdin alehem. You have knowledge, you have access to Torah knowledge that you can only access if you make mistakes. You've navigated some of these difficult areas, and therefore we want you to be our leader. So how do we know that there were still Baalei Amana, that there were still trustworthy Erlich people in the times of the Churban? After all, we started this whole sugya in the middle of the page with Rav Dimi, and he said there's 18 things. We're losing all these Talmidei Chachamim. The Gemara says there's still Baalei Amana. What is this person's response when he's asked to be the leader? So it says the Gemara, 6 lines from the bottom, Yisa bayoma hu leimor lo ehyeh chovesh. I will not be your leader. Ubevesi ein lechem ve'ein simla. In my home there is no bread and there are no clothes. So of course these are not references literally, but they're meant to say, I don't have lechem, I don't have Torah, and I don't have the leadership skills that you need. Lo sisimuni katzin, I'm not going to be a nation. Don't make me a leader over the nation. Ein Yisa, what does the word Yisa mean when it says Yisa bayomahu? Ein Yisa ela lashon shvua. How do we know that the word Yisa is a lashon shvua? Because says the Gemara, Shenemar lo sisa es Shem Hashem Elokecha lashab. So we see that it's used in that way. Therefore, the word Yisa, the person makes a promise. That's very erlich. A person says, I want you to be a leader. He says, I'm really not roi to be a leader. So therefore, we see that they're balei amana. What did he mean when he said, Lo ehyeh chovesh, lo hayisi michovshe beis hamedrash? I was not one of the people who was imprisoned in the beis medrash, right? Chovesh mi beis ha'asurim. It's the same exact language. So it's just an interesting comparison of language where when a person is chovesh beis ha'asurim, what does it mean? It means you're literally trapped. You're stuck in the beis medrash. So what does it mean to become a leader, to be a rav? It means that in order to become a rav, you have to be trapped in the beis medrash. Just like a prisoner is trapped in his cell, you have to be trapped in the beis medrash. What did he mean? This particular person who was so erlich and turned down the leadership of ubevesi ein lechem ve'ein simla. What does it mean when he said that there's no bread and there's no coat in his house? I don't have what you need to be the leader. I'm not knowledgeable enough. So once he said that, we see therefore that there were balei amana, and this really does go against what Rav Dimi was saying, is that all of these great people were removed from the tzibur. Says the Gemara, no, maybe he wasn't so erlich. Maybe there really weren't balei amana. 4 lines from the bottom. The Dilma shiny hasam the e amar lehu gmirna amre le emalan. Maybe he was lying when he said, I just don't have enough information, because had he said, I do know what I'm talking about, they would have said, great. Here's a really complicated hilchos nida shaila, and he would have had nothing to say to them. Says the Gemara, you're right, but we still know that, I guess that's possible. He could have lied, but it's not really true, because if he was going to lie, then he should have said the following lie. Says the Gemara, I was learned, but I forgot everything. And that way he looks even better, but he didn't say that. What then must it be that he meant when he said that I don't want to be the leader? It must be that the lo ehyeh chovesh klal, that I am not a learner at all. I've never been in the beis medrash, and therefore, it seems that there were balei amana. Says the Gemara, Eini, is it really true that there were balei amana? After all, Rava says, Lo charva Yerushalayim ad shepasku mimena balei amana. This is the exact opposite of what we've been trying to say. We just established that there were balei amana, and now the Gemara says in the name of Rava, the Yerushalayim was only destroyed after the balei amana disappeared. 2 lines from the bottom, Shenemar, showed to b'chutzas Yerushalayim. You can walk through all of the streets of Yerushalayim. Go find me one guy who's a balei amana. Go find me one, and then I'll forgive all of you. So we see very clearly that there were no balei amana in Yerushalayim. So we have a stira. How do we look at the line that says that there were balei amana? And how do we look at Rav at the bottom of the page to say that there weren't? So it says the Gemara, lo kashya, top of your dalad amud beis, haba divrei Torah, haba masa umatan. It depends what we're talking about. B'divrei Torah havu. When it came to divrei Torah, there were people who were still erlich. This person who said Yisrael, that he's not going to be a leader. I don't have enough Torah. Fine, that we understand. The masa umatan lo havu. But when it came to business, there really was nobody who was honest, and that's what the pasuk was referring to. That there were no balei amana. There were no people who really trusted in Hashem. And of course, masa umatan. That's one of the questions as well that's asked in the 6 questions that Hashem asked. It's the first one of nasasa v'nasata be'amuna. Were we honest in business? So that did not exist at that time. All right, back to the big stuff. Says the Gemara, Yudal Amud Beis, 2nd line, Taner Rabbanan Ma'aseh Rabbi Yochanan and Zakkai she'rochev ala chamor, he was riding on an animal, on a donkey. By Mahalach Baderach, and he was traveling. Rabbi Elazar ben Arach was traveling behind him. Achamar Acharav, he was on a donkey behind him. Amar Lo, Rabbi Elazar ben Arach says to his Rebbe, he says Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he says, Rebbe, Shanali parak echad b'ma'aseh merkava. Please teach me one parak, one idea in ma'aseh merkava. So the Rebbe said to him, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, Amar lo kach shanisi lachem v'lo b'merkava b'yachid. I taught you a halacha already that you're not allowed to learn ma'aseh merkava when it's one-on-one. I'm not, as a Rebbe, I'm not allowed to teach you. Elohim kain hayachacham mevi midaito. You have to have your own basic knowledge. So Amar lo, Rebbe says to him, hold on one second. Tarsheni lomar lefanecha davar echad shel matani. Let me say one thing that you taught me. Amar lo emor. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, okay, you can speak. Miyad yorad Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai me'al hachamor v'nis'atev yoshav ala even tachas hazayis. Instantly, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai gets off the donkey. He wraps himself up and he sits on a stone under an olive tree. So this, and then they started learning about ma'aseh merkava. It's very strange though, because he just said, teach me. And his Rebbe said, I'm not allowed to teach you, but he knew about it already. So that's some of the Mefarshim here say, the Gra here writes this idea that when he said, let me teach you something that you taught me, it doesn't actually mean that he learned it from him. it's a language of kavod, a language of deference, that even though it's slightly inaccurate in what's happening, but it's still something that is mutter to do under the circumstances. But
Required to, he thinks it's required to do.
right. That
You
way,
speak to a rabbi, didn't you teach me, et cetera, et cetera,
Right.
et cetera.
the language here is a
I
little.
don't know. too
The
many
language here is a
people,
little
but
too specific. It's tarsheni lomar lefanecha davar echad shelimad tani. Permit.
Allow me to say something that you taught me, even though you didn't teach me.
Correct.
Since you're my rabbi, I can't say to you, I know something that you didn't teach me.
Correct.
I assume it's Rabbi Mufak specifically, but
I don't know. I can't imagine saying it.
I agree. I agree.
Feels so weird. It feels like it feels like a lie. I mean, it is a lie. It's inaccurate. I'm just saying it's
not
certain.
accurate.
It's not a lie, but it's not
It's
accurate.
not technically accurate.
Right. I don't know. This requires more research, but so some of the Meforshim don't learn this way. Some of the Meforshim say that no, he did teach him Rosh Prakim, and then he wanted to dig deeper. So that could be maybe he was showing he was maybe Midaito. That's what some of the Meforshim say, which is a little easier in the words, but that's not what the Gra said. Anyways, he got off the donkey and he sat on a rock under an olive tree. All of these things are relevant. These details are relevant on the Nimshal side of the Gemara. But anyways, the Gemara says as follows. Amar lo Rebbe mipnei maya rad tamei ala chamor. Why did you get down off the donkey? So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, Amar, he says, Efshara tadorsh b'maaseh merkava. Is there a scenario where you're teaching about maaseh merkava, v'shchina imanu, and Hashem is with us, u'malachei ashar smelaven osanu, and we have angels, the celestial angels that are accompanying us, v'ani erkav ala chamor, and I'm sitting on a donkey, like it's the pasnish, it's not right. So therefore he got up. Anyways, miyad, right away. Why does the Gemara say miyad? That's very, what had to be immediate? What's going on here? Every word. Miyad, pasach Rabbi Elazar ben Arach b'maiser merkava v'darash v'yarda ish min hashamayim v'siva v'kol ha'ilanu shebasada. So Rabbi Elazar ben Arach started talking about maiser merkava, and v'darash, and then he gave a drasha. And when he did that, v'yarda ish min hashamayim, and then fire came down from the heavens, and the fire surrounded all of the trees in the field. So,
I think it's good for one.
I don't think so. What
Let's
line?
go to line,
That's where we are right now.
Okay.
So the Gemara says that the fire surrounded all the trees. Paschu, kulan, all the trees. This is referring to the trees. All the trees woke up. V'amru shira, they sang a song. Ma shira amru. What song did they sing? Hallelujah Hashem min ha'aretz tananim l'chol temos eis peri v'chol arazim hallelujah. That's what they said. Anyways, na'aneh malach min ha'esh v'amar hein hein ma'aseh merkava. That which you are giving a drasha about, your description of the ma'aseh merkava, that is accurate. Wow. Could you imagine giving a shiur? All of a sudden, a malach comes out like you nailed it. It's like a description still of this lofty idea of the kaviyachol nature of trying to explain what Yechezkel saw, which is usher to talk about unless you really thread the needle perfectly. That's a big compliment. Amad Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, v'nashku al rosho, gave a kiss to his Talmud, to Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. V'amar Baruch Hashem Elokei Yisrael shenasan ben leAvram Avinu sheyodea lahavin v'lachkor v'lidosh b'maaseh merkava. It's amazing that you gave a descendant to Avram Avinu. Why Avraham? Who knows how to understand, and lachkor is to investigate, v'lidrosh, and then to articulate that which is the maaseh merkava. And then the Gemara teaches us this dichotomy of different profiles of educators. Yesh na edoresh ve'ein mekayim. There are those who might be good speakers, but they're not really good at keeping halacha. No mekayim ve'ein edoresh. Some people know how to keep things, but they don't know how to teach things. Ata, you Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, are no edoresh ve'no mekayim. You're able to kill both birds with being one person. You're able to fulfill both sides of being that master educator. Hashrecha Avram Avinu, for the second time, she'Elazar ben Arach yatsa mechalatzecha, that Elazar ben Arach is a descendant of you. And Rabbi Yoshua heard this story. He heard this story while he and Rabbi Yossi HaKohen were traveling. Amru, they said, sure, we heard they did it and they got away with it. I don't know what's going on here. So some of the Meforshim pick up on the fact that they were both traveling. They're both traveling. Why? Because that was the din of learning Maaseh Merkava, that it's only true with one-on-one if the student was Roi, and therefore they had to be alone. That's why some of the Meforshim say. Anyways, the Pasach Rabbi Yeshua Darash were 4 lines into the wide lines and Yudal Amid Beis. So then Rabbi Yeshua opens up and he gives a drasha. It was the summer, Niskashu shamayim be'oven. All of a sudden, it got cloudy in the middle of the summer, which was very uncommon for that locale. The nira kimin keshes be'anon. They saw kimin, not a keshes, something that looked like a rainbow in the clouds. Fahiu malachi hasharis miskapsin uvayin lishmoa. Kivnei adam shemiskapsin uvos liros be'mazmuti chasan v'kala. People came to sit around and watch him learn, just like people came to sit around and watch the craziness at a wedding. After they learned, he went over to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. You guys are so blessed. It's amazing what I was able to see. I even dreamt about you. We were all surrounding Har Sinai. Not Yatzisa. It was placed on us a baskol from Shamaim. Alu Lukan. Everyone should please come up here. Come up to this lofty place. Traklin gedolim umatzos nos mutzas lachem. Beautiful ballrooms and beautiful beds or couches are laid out for you. Atem mitamidechem esamidei samidechem muzmanim lekas shlishis. You are all invited into the kas shlishis. The kas shlishis is a reference to a group that was very close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Don't know what it means, but that's what it says. Eini, is it in fact true that Rabbi Elazar ben Aruch that he spoke about Ma'aseh Merkava? After all, the Gemara says 15, 20 lines from the bottom, 3/4 of the way down, Vatanya. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Shalosh Hartzaos Hein. There are three who spoke about this. Rabbi Yeshua Hirtza Dvarim Lifnei Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Kiva Hirtza Lifnei Rabbi Yeshua, and Chananya ben Chachinoi Hirtza Lifnei Rabbi Akiva. Vilu Rabbi Elazar ben Arach Lo Kachashid. There were three other dialogues that took place on this topic of Ma'aseh Merkava. However, we do not see anything listed about Rabbi Elazar ben Arach in this Mishnah. So says the Gemara, why is that true? So the Gemara responds, the only people who were included were the Artzi v'Artzu Kamei Kachashid. It was people who taught it to others, but had first had it taught to them. So they first heard it and then they taught it. Those are the people who are included. But the Artzi v'lo Artzi Kamei, if a person presented it, but he wasn't presented to him, lo Kachashid. That doesn't count. That person is not listed. When it came to Chananya ben Chachinoi, no one ever presented it to him. That was never shown to us in the Gemara. And the Gemara says, you're right. The Artzi miha kamei man de Artzi. He presented it at least to someone who it was presented to. So even if you're one derivative away, that's fine. But that's why Rabbi Elazar ben Arach was not included in this list. Probably one of the more famous stories in Shas about the Kabbalistic world, or whatever that world is called. I don't even know what to call it. The Gemara says, 10 lines from the bottom, Tan Rabbanan. Arba nichnasu lepardes. 4 people went into the pardes, into the orchard. So what is this Gan Eden? There's discussion in the Rishonim. Ve'eluhein, ben Azai ben Zoma, Acher ve'Rebbi Akiva. Ben Azai and Ben Zoma, Acher is Rabbi Elisha ben Avuya. He was the Rebbe of Rav Meir, and Rabbi Akiva. Amar lehem Rabbi Akiva. Kshatem agim eitzel avnei shayish tahor. When you go see these very pure marble stones, al tomru mayim mayim. These stones were apparently so translucent that they actually had an appearance of flowing water. And it's a product that we're not familiar with, but it's not physical anyway. So whatever it means, just imagine very shiny, or don't imagine it. I feel I'm just uncomfortable talking about this. So that's what the Gemara says. Just don't call it water. That's what the Gemara says. You're not allowed to speak untruths around here. This is probably a good idea. Ben Azai hates its fames. Ben Azai looked, doesn't say what he looked at, and he died. And it seems to say that he looked over toward HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he saw something. That's what Rashi says halfway down. Hates l'tzad shchina, to the side where the shchina was. And all of Akasuv Omer Yakar b'nei Hashem hamavsa lechasidav. How difficult is it in the eyes of Hashem, the death of the pious? Ben Zoma hates Yitzvinivka. Ben Zoma also looked seemingly to l'tzad shchina, and he was damaged. So when you've eaten honey, you should stop eating at some point so you don't throw up. Acher kitzetz benetios. When it came to Acher, when it came to Rabbi Elisha ben Avuya, he cut down trees, obviously playing off the reference of the pardes of the orchard, but exactly what does it mean? Not so simple. Okay. Rabbi Akiva Yatsa b'Shalom. He was the only one who managed to successfully be in that space and come back all well. Now that we've mentioned Ben Zoma, we're going to discuss a couple of side halachos, and then we'll call it a day. We're going to go about 5-6 lines onto Daf Tesvav and Aleph, and then we'll stop. Shalu es Ben Zoma. Mahu lisruse kalba. What is the halacha about neutering a dog? Is that allowed in halacha? Amar lahem uvartzechem lo sasu. In your land, you're not allowed to do that. Kol shebartzechem lo sasu. It's true about everything. Normally, the din would be true by an animal that's being brought for korban. What about a dog that'll never be brought for a korban? So the halacha is that we're not allowed to do that. What happens if you own a dog? You're allowed to send it to the vet. Okay, these are all shilos and poskim. Says the Gemara next, Shalu as benzoma besula shibra. If there's a woman who never had intercourse, but she managed to get pregnant, ma'ula kohen gadol. What would be the status of this woman to be married to a kohen gadol who we know needs to marry a besula? Michai shinon l'deshmuel. Are we concerned about Shmuel, who had a unique understanding of Tashmish Hamita? To Amar Shmuel, he says, as we turn to the top of Tesvav Amud Aleph, Yochal anei lival kama be'ilos belodan. He knew how to do what Rashi refers to at the top as Shahayavaki behataya, that he was able to have Tashmish Hamita without breaking the Besulim. So yes, there was Tashmish Hamita. However, she still had her Besulim, so there was no dam. So maybe this woman conceived with Tashmish Hamita behataya, where she had intercourse and therefore she conceived because there was zera, they had intercourse, but there was just no dam because he was a baki behataya. Do we have to be concerned about that? Or Dilma de Shmuel lo shchicha, really Shmuel is not so common, and maybe she got pregnant another way. Says the Gemara, Amar lahu de Shmuel lo shchiach. First of all, Shmuel is not shchiach, and we don't make rules based on that which is uncommon. And second of all, the Chayshina and Shema be'ambati ibra. We would be concerned that maybe she conceived in an ambati. The story of Ben Sira, of course, that a man went into the mikvah and there was some viable zera on his body, and then it transferred from him to the water, and then a woman went into the mikvah and it managed to pair up with an egg, and that ended up making a baby. Says the Gemara, that's not possible. V'amar Shmuel. Shmuel says that a woman cannot conceive that way. Why? Because seemingly a woman can only conceive through Tashmish Hamita, where the zera is ejaculated directly into the body. Amar Shmuel, Kol shechva zera she'enu yorek kechetz enu mazras. That if it doesn't project itself into the body kechetz, like an arrow, as it leaves the body, then enu mazras, that cannot lead to conception. So says the Gemara, not a good argument. Meikara nami yorek kechetz hava. It's true that initially it was yorek kechetz. That is viable zera. The fact that it got into her body not through that method and it was through the bath, that's still a possibility. So that's what the final thing that we're going to learn for today. We'll stop right here. Tomorrow we're supposed to learn a blot and a half. Today's Wednesday.
Yeah.
Today's Wednesday. Tomorrow's supposed to learn a blot and a half. Test Vav is huge, so I'll see how far I get. If it's impossibly long, then we may add a Friday daf. I'm not sure. I just have to see what's going on because we have a wedding tomorrow night. I will be here for daf. I just don't know how much time I'm going to have to prepare between now and then. And let's stop right here. Wishing you all a beautiful night.
Yeah.
Bruchim to you.